Welcome to the CEO of Destiny podcast, where you will find the tools to fulfill the purpose of your generation and wildly succeed in the marketplace. And now your host, Andre J. Benjamin.
Talk about your bride a bit. You know, I know the importance, how you came to meet her, and what impact she had on your life and is still having on your life in this new season.
So when I was in the Navy, I took compassionate leave because my mother was towards the end of her life. She'd managed to live, you know, a good 11, 12 years longer than the people predicted.
And she was right what she told the young man.
She was absolutely right. And she did tell me one time she's not leaving until all her 3 children are safe and taken care of. And I was the middle one. My brother left home earlier. He joined the Air Force, and my sister joined the police force. We must have a thing about uniforms. I don't know. But so she saw that I was safe, and it was my turn to take her to the hospital for chemotherapy. And I was being a typical, 21, 22-year-old. There was a good soccer game on TV that I wanted to watch. So I wasn't actually very nice or very happy about it. Being typically, a kid being selfish, if you like. Anyway, I was wheeling her through the hospital ward towards the chemotherapy unit, and a nurse stepped out of a side door, and they hugged each other. So my mum was in the wheelchair, but the nurse came and hugged and shouted, "Audrey, how lovely to see you again." And I could tell that these two knew each other really well. And then she looked at me, and that was it. I was smitten. Cupid's arrow right in that moment. So that was one of my mother's last acts, was to introduce me to my wife. And we had an incredible marriage. We were so happy. We didn't always agree on everything, but we never disagreed relationship-wise. We were always with adversity, got stronger and stronger. And unfortunately, she was born with a heart condition, and she wasn't supposed to live either. She was never supposed to see her teenage years, never supposed to see, her 20s and stuff. Unfortunately, it got the better of her December last year. So she had her transition December the 2nd. And she was very ill. I mean, she really was exhausted by that point. But to go that long and to be, she was a nurse, of course, and to be a healer and a caregiver for so long and successful at it was amazing. So she, again, I'm very lucky to have had very, very, not just in books, but in real life, to have 2 of the most powerful women I've ever met around me and pushing me and encouraging me,
And there was a sweet moment in your book where you talked about when you go to your mom and you have made the choice about pursuing the relationship. Can you talk a little bit about that?
My mom knew. You mean? Yeah. I mean, she
basically signed on to like.
She was wondering what took me so long, I think.
Yes.
And so I decided to leave the Navy because I'd already seen so many Dear John letters in the Navy where someone's gone to sea for a year, and then it's tough on the people left behind. And Lynn, my wife, her father was a sea captain, so he was away at sea for 2 years at a time, and she knew what that felt like as a kid, and she knew what it felt like for her mum. And I didn't want that, and so I decided to change careers, basically. So I tell people that I decided to use my radiation physics education that I got in the Navy while I was there, and pursue a career in the hospital in radiation therapy. But actually, I just became a stalker. There was a job available in the same unit where she was working, and so I took that job without thinking about it, actually, and then took about 3 months to build up the courage to ask her out. And anyway, that was what my mum was shaking her head about. When are you going to ask her?
Exactly. That's what I thought was funny was when I read how your mom was like, "Come on, like, what's taking so long?"
She and Lynn had fantastic intuition, as most women do. Although society sometimes undervalues that. It's one of the things I bring into my businesses, actually, is to help people, to coach people to move away from analytical decision making and towards intuitive decision making. And to do that, you have to do things that are somewhat unusual. You have to start to learn to meditate, and you have to get out into nature and connect in a different way than perhaps you've been taught in the past. And in doing that, if you're lucky like me as a man, you can probably develop 10% of a woman's intuition. And that's enough to make really good business decisions. If I could bottle it, you'd be talking to the richest man in the world.
Oh yes, definitely. Can you talk about when you stepped into the workforce and just sum that up? Because I'm going to pivot into asking you questions about what it was to be a CEO and how you stepped up and things of that nature. But I want to contrast the difference of when you were in the workforce versus why you stepped out on your own to launch your own? I know
well,
there was a pivotal
probably, I think you probably know the answer because I was in the corporate world. That was enough motivation for me to get out of the corporate world, because I wasn't good at it. I was not good at the corporate world. When I look back and analyze my career, you know, I probably spent 75% of my time sitting in a meeting room, talking about things that had nothing to do with customer satisfaction, that had nothing to do with creativity, had nothing to do with you know, upgrading what we were doing. You know, it was all about keeping employees happy. It was human resource system after system. You know, these horrible things that people have to go through at the end of the year, the performance and appraisal systems. I mean, they were agonizing and torture for me. But I'm as good a BSer as anybody. So I made a really good career out of saying the same thing that everybody else in the room has already said, but in a different way. And I just thought it was pointless. So I got more and more frustrated. And then one day, so over a period of about a year working with this particular company, I was working closely with the CEO, who I still have a relationship with, and I'm still have respect for, that we had a product that was sitting on the shelf that I knew could be further used by babies that had this enzyme deficiency. But I couldn't convince anybody to put money behind, not a marketing campaign, but an awareness campaign that this product exists. And so there were a lot of babies suffering unnecessarily, and I'm sure some died as a result. It sounds awfully cruel and cold, but this was a public company, and the CEOs made a very smart analytical decision, and that is, if we put money behind this, the shareholders will kill us. So we can't do that. So I decided to do it myself. That was when I decided, you know, I said, okay, I'll fix this myself, and I'll come out of the corporate world and I'll start a company. And because of the experience I'd had in the corporate world, I wanted it to be anything but that. So I didn't want meetings. I don't want an army of people. And actually, as it turns out, I built a hub model. So like a model of alliances, vendors to do all the different functional things that we need. And then I decided, you know, I've seen enough of the different sides of the business. I don't need to hire anybody. I couldn't afford to hire anity, truthfully.
Which I think is phenomenal, because you've done that multiple times. You've done this multiple times where you.
Well, it worked so well the first time. so if it ain't fixed, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know. So what I found was it worked beautifully, and that my management style I could relax the I'm the CEO, you do as I say kind of approach, and become more peer-to-peer, because these people were experts at what they did, and I don't know their side of the business. And so I became more of a conductor role, more of a peer-to-peer. It was more important to trust people than to supervise people. So I had to change, and up until then I was a bit of a control guy. I was always quoted as saying, if you want something done well, do it yourself. And now in this new business model I had to completely change my attitude and approach to it. And so the hub model works really well. And the surprising finding of the hub model was it was highly profitable. So I've never had an employee in all of my companies. And so I started this company with about $200, an idea, and then I raised 2.1 million to get the rights to the product that I'd been fighting with the CEO over for so long.
Can you take us through that process of how you were able to raise the 2.1?
With sheer belief. So I probably was rejected 50 times because I hadn't been a CEO and I hadn't had my own company. And we have this fantasy that people love startups and excited entrepreneurs, but the reality is that you really need to get somewhere first. You need to prove a concept. So I kept getting knockbacks, and I traveled around the United States to try and raise money. It's not a lot of money, and that was one of the lessons I learned. I didn't realize that if I'd asked to raise 20 million, I probably could have raised it a lot quicker, because they couldn't see how am I going to make money out of 2.1 million, and I wasn't thinking that through. Later
That's
on,
a lesson of itself, because you're saying ask bigger, because
exactly
on a smaller scale, but then for an investor, they're looking at it like, well, why would I waste my time at a big
lawyer fees, and that was proven about 2 years later once I was a bit successful. I found the rights. I wanted to get rights to another product, and I raised 28 million in 6 weeks. So that proves it really. But the raising money is no fun, I have to say. You've got to have really strong mentality. You've got to use all the tools and techniques that I use, because getting rejected all the time, you start to question yourself and think, am I crazy? Am I to do this? And they're actually telling me I'm crazy as well. But so what I decided to do was to prove the concept of the business plan that I put together. So I went and I've got another product that I managed to get the rights to for nothing, It's a very, very small product, very niched. It only did about $30,000 of sales a year.
So how did you negotiate that person to give it to you for free, give you the rights for free?
Because they needed to do another manufacturing run, and it would have cost them 90,000. So basically 3 years revenue. So I said, well, give me the product and I'll pay for the manufacturing. And so then I scrambled to find a manufacturer who would manufacture it for me, but not require payment for a year.
Nice.
And yeah, that took a bit of doing, but I did it. And then I built the model around it. And then I went back to the same investors who'd rejected me and said, here's the model. This is how it works. Because I'd taken this $30,000 business, which you can all laugh at, and it was now doing a year later $120,000. So I quadrupled. And I said, so imagine what I can do now with this other product for which I need 2.1 million. And so I got the 2.1 million. And then about 3 years later, we were doing 12 million a year. So it all worked out nicely.
So when you, can you take us to a moment of when you were an employee and you were the first to win the Marketing Professional of the Year award? Can you talk about that grand award, that grand prize, and how it?
I was so excited. I don't know what I was thinking, but I was excited because I was a sales manager and no salesman. In the UK, it's different in the United States actually, but in the UK, there's such a division between sales and marketing. They don't like each other, and marketing have a superiority complex. And so for a sales manager to then put together a marketing program, and for that marketing program to be selected by a committee for potential to win a prize of European Marketer of the Year, there was the gold, silver, and bronze prize. That caused so much attention and backbiting, and you can't imagine what was going on behind the scenes. How dare a sales manager think that he can do marketing? You know. Exactly. Anyway, it got selected. It came second actually. So I got European Marketer of the Year, but there was kind of a double prize, if you like, and I got a little bronze statue, a little gold statue, and I was very proud of. And then I was on the stage, and then there was the American executive team. This was 3M. Okay, so this is a huge global company.
Absolutely.
American executive team had flown in their private jet for the evening of like an Oscars evening for the presentation of these prizes. Everybody knew that I'd won this prize by this point, and so I thought I've made it. I'm a millionaire now, you know. So I
financial independence is in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And they had envelopes, and I thought there must be, you know, this is America, right? So there must be millions in these envelopes. And it was a lot of fanfare, and they presented this envelope to me, you know, and I didn't open it on stage, thank goodness. But I tried to remain calm and dignified. And then I went to the bathroom, and I sat in the bathroom, and I took it out of my pocket and I opened it. And it was a single share, one share of 3M stock. And then in those days, it was worth about $75, I think it was. And I just laughed at myself, like you're laughing now. It's just like, what was I thinking? You know, I guess I'm going to have to keep on working then.
So, and what I love about that story is it's such a it's a microcosm of something that is that you expect. People go in and it's kind of like unvoiced and unmet expectations. Well, they believe that because we were all given a narrative that you work hard, you go to school, you go to college, whatever, you get a great job, and as you pay your dues, it's like a Disney movie, everything will line up, and you know, this is my moment. I've murdered it, I've killed it in this area, I'm doing so great, and then bam, you see that you get this stark contrast of that. You see, wait a minute, $75, like this is supposed to get me, this is supposed to motivate me for the next year. How's this even going to get me through the next sales quarter? I love the fact that you put that in the book, because, and that how you said, you know, you really thought financial independence was right next there, because that's a real thing for people, is that nobody, you said you seldom do people ever get rich working for others. And that's true. And that's, you know, I see that. I mean, it can happen. You can work in tech and you can get shares and you can make a few million, but that's not financial independence. But to be, you know, financial independence, what is that? A lot of people, this is one of the things I coach in the courses is the relationship to money. Because I've had to learn it. Growing up poor, you know, you have this sort of mentality of lack, and your relationship with money is very poor, and you can be somewhat jealous of those that have it and resent it or resentful of it. And so you have to learn that everything in the universe is made of energy. This is a physics fact. You can't deny it. Everything, we're all made of the same stuff, and that includes money and thoughts. They're all made of energy. And when you change it, when I changed my understanding of money, that it's just energy,
and that energy has to flow, it completely changed my approach to financial independence. In that it's not financial independence, like I thought when I was in the corporate world, it's not something to reach or something to hold or grasp. It's not the top of it's not a summit. You know, it's not sitting in a Hogwarts vault, sitting on a pile of gold coins. Financial independence is having a huge amount of money flow through your life, and you use it wisely, and you invest it wisely, and you keep it flowing. And the more you flow, the more you let flow, the more comes in. And so that's happened with my businesses. You know, it's, you know, never sit on a pile of cash or anything like that. And so, because when energy stagnates, you know, it starts to diminish or find another outlet. And so, so that's been a very important thing. And it's something I talk about a lot, because most people don't like talking about money. It's considered crass. They'd rather talk about the sex lives than money. And so helping people, encouraging people to see money as energy, and talk about it in an energetic fashion, if you like, understanding how energy moves, and that energy can either be created or destroyed, only converted into another form, changes our approach to it completely.
Equals MC squared. What did you talk a little bit about the financial quicksand? You talked about your family being in financial quicksand, and that's kind of the situation that a lot of people are finding themselves in. Some based upon their own decisions that they made personally, and then others based upon the environments that they're in with downsizing and, you know, recessions and all, you know, all the, whatever the labels of the day of the different places that people, whoever is watching or listening, what they're going through economically. Talk about that contrast of how you were in that situation, and then how where you're at now, and the connector, and also if you could outline the difference between being busy versus being effective, because you alluded to that, sitting in meetings that were just, what am I here for again? And wait a minute, I could just repeat the same stuff and say it in a different way, and I could get through. Can you talk about how you realize the value of time, and then talk about the being in financial quicksand, and how you can get out of the financial quicksand with the
Yeah, I mean totally, and both are probably handled the same way. So you know, when I grew up, I say we grew up poor. My father was unemployed my whole life, and we lived on welfare pretty much. So I never had an allowance or anything like that. So I first started to make money. I created my first business when I was 12, and it was on the school bus, because the school, it was only a 5-mile trip, but it was so many stops. It took about an hour and a half. And the first stop was to bring on the daily shoppers. There was one bus to and from the village. Okay, and kids would jump off, run into the candy store, get some candy, and some of them wouldn't make it back on before the bus took off. And so and people were afraid, and little kids were being bullied to go get candy for the big guys, you know. And so I saw a business opportunity there, so I decided to do it. And so everybody gave me their money, and I ran into the candy store, and it was so much more efficient, so much easier for one person to make 5 orders or 10 orders, and for 10 people to make individual orders. So I never missed the bus, you know. So I got everyone's order and got back on the bus, and my reward was candy, okay, because I couldn't afford my own candy. So and of course I had the candy, so I learned, you know, I'm eating my own profits. But I like that. So I realized that people will pay for convenience, and people will pay for courage and all the rest of it. So that's how I started, and that was the beginning of my relationship with money. There's nothing wrong with this, you know. This is good. I've managed to get candy for free by providing a service, and everyone's happy, you know, apart from the bus driver. So who's threatening to close the door. And so I went on and did that. So then I started organizing card drives, so with like bridge and whist drives, because the people in the villages, they didn't have any community. There was no the kids didn't have a youth club. The seniors didn't have anywhere to hang out, no town hall or anything. So I used emotional blackmail to convince a rector, or so, you know, a vicar, to let us use his house, his hall, if you like, to run these card games. And I had and I sold tickets to all the seniors, and the kids could hang out in the youth club and everything. And we had these tournaments and raffles and all that kind of stuff. And I made a significant amount of money for me, from having no money whatsoever to suddenly having 10 or 20 quid, you know, like say $30 or something in my pocket, was massive to me. And then I saw what money can do, because, you know, my mother's suffering terribly, and I could buy my mother something that she desperately wanted, you know, or wasn't able to have. And that really changed my relationship. So that's how I got out of my version of quicksand, and I took that out into my life. But I made all the mistakes that everybody else makes, and I got into too much debt. You know, I got a mortgage that everyone said, get the biggest mortgage you can possibly get, because house prices never go down, right? That's what everyone told us. And so, and I did, and it was choking and suffocating, and I decided never, ever to put myself in that position again. So the first part for me is to get yourself debt-free. Absolutely. No matter what it takes, no matter the sacrifices you have to make, get debt-free. And the people in my course Transformation, the people who have got debt-free for the first time, they always email me the same way. It's always capital letters. Wow, I never thought it would feel like this. I am debt-free for the first time. And some of them say, in parentheses, in decades, in capital letters. That is the first part of financial independence. You've got to get debt-free, however you can make that happen. Downsizing, selling stuff that you don't need, and whatever it takes. And then once you're debt-free, you're no longer susceptible to, when you've got heavy debt and your stomach turns over and you think, what have I done? How have I got into this mess? And you're watching TV, let's say you're watching an NFL game, and there's all these get out of debt free adverts, these commercials on, and they make you think of debt all the time. And the more you think of debt, the more debt you're going to have. So you have to change, you've got to change the whole thing. So you get debt free, and then you'll never be affected by that. You'll feel fantastic. You'll feel free for the first time, probably in years or whatever. That's the starting point. So once you do that, you can get out of the quicksand.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do us a favor. If this was useful in any way for you, please go to iTunes and leave us a review. Reviews will allow others to easily discover the podcast. If you'd like more information and to receive a free download, Rediscover Your Destiny, go to ceofdestiny.com.